A town of secrets. Red Pines was a town wrapped in shadows, hidden within the dense woods of the Pacific Northwest. For years, the town had been the source of legends, whispered secrets, and tales of disappearances. Stories about an old underground facility, known as the Bunker Below, had circulated for generations. Built during the Cold War, it was rumored to house experiments so horrific that the government had abandoned it, leaving everything behind. It was said that those who entered never returned. Jake, Lisa, and Mark were friends bound by a shared love of adventure and urban exploration. They had made a name for themselves on their online channel, Urban Echoes, exploring forgotten buildings and abandoned places, always seeking the thrill of the unknown. But nothing had prepared them for what they were about to face in Red Pines. One night, Jake received an anonymous email. It contained only a single attachment, a half-burned map of the town with an X marked near the edge of the forest. A message accompanied it. For the brave only, the entrance awaits. Jake's curiosity was piqued, and he immediately called his friends. "This could be our biggest find yet," Jake said, the excitement in his voice unmistakable. "The bunker everyone's talked about for years, it's real." Lisa frowned as she read the email, her expression cautious. "Jake, this sounds dangerous. Why would someone send us this? And why now?" Mark shrugged. "Who cares? If it's real, this could be huge. Imagine, an underground Cold War bunker, untouched for decades. We could be the first to document it." Lisa hesitated, staring at the coordinates on the map. "All right, but we have to take this seriously. We bring everything we need, backup batteries, food, first aid, extra lights. We don't know what's down there." "Agreed," Jake replied. "We'll meet tomorrow night at the warehouse. This is going to be epic." Chapter 1. The Entrance. The warehouse at the edge of Red Pines was a relic of the town's forgotten past. Its towering structure loomed against the night sky, windows shattered, and ivy creeping up the walls like nature's claws reclaiming what was once man-made. The air was thick with fog, the scent of wet earth mingling with the cool breeze. Jake, Lisa, and Mark stood at the entrance, their breath visible in the chill of the evening. "Feels like a horror movie," Mark joked, adjusting his backpack as he scanned the building with his flashlight. Lisa rolled her eyes. "Well, let's not make it one, okay? Stay close, and if anything feels off, we head back." They moved inside, their flashlights sweeping over the graffiti-covered walls and broken machinery scattered across the floor. The warehouse was eerily silent, the only sound the soft rustle of wind slipping through the cracks. They followed the coordinates on the map until they reached a corner where a metal hatch was hidden beneath years of dust and debris. "This is it," Jake whispered, his eyes alight with excitement. He pulled out a crowbar and wedged it into the hatch, straining as he pried it open. With a loud groan, the rusted hinges gave way, and a rush of cold, stale air billowed up from the darkness below. Lisa peered down, shining her flashlight into the abyss. "It's deeper than I thought, and the air smells old." "Only one way to find out," Jake said, grinning as he started descending the narrow staircase. Mark followed closely, and Lisa hesitated only for a moment before joining them, her grip tight on her flashlight. The steps creaked under their weight, and the walls felt close and oppressive, damp with mold and moisture. As they descended further, the air grew colder, and the smell of mildew intensified. Their flashlights illuminated the old, reinforced concrete walls, revealing patches of rust and the occasional scratch mark. Finally, they reached the bottom. The staircase opened into a long corridor, lit only by the thin beams of their flashlights. The walls were lined with rusty pipes, some dripping water that echoed in the silence. Faded signs in Russian and strange symbols were painted sporadically on the walls. "This place is huge," Mark whispered, his voice echoing. "It's like a maze." Jake nodded. "And we're going to be the first ones to map it out." Chapter 2. The First Discovery. They ventured deeper, following the main corridor as it split into multiple pathways. Each hall felt identical, and the cold air felt almost unnatural. The walls, once pristine concrete, were now covered in peeling paint and claw-like scratches. Some rooms they passed were filled with old bunk beds, overturned lockers, and rusty furniture. Papers were scattered across the floors, yellowed with age. Lisa paused as they entered a room filled with old military equipment. "Look at this," she said, picking up a notebook from one of the tables. The pages were filled with handwritten notes in Russian, accompanied by crude drawings of humanoid figures. They were documenting experiments on people. Mark leaned over, his eyes scanning the pages. "These figures, they're deformed. Look at the eyes. They're all crossed out." And here he pointed to a diagram. "It says something about sensitivity to sound." Jake frowned, flipping through the pages. "This isn't a fallout shelter. It's a lab. More like a prison," Lisa added, her voice uneasy. "We need to be careful. They didn't just leave this place empty. They locked it up." As they moved further into the bunker, they began to notice more signs of containment protocols. Heavy steel doors lined the walls, many of them sealed shut. Some had windows that were fogged over with grime, obscuring the view inside. Occasionally, they found claw marks carved deep into the concrete, as if something had desperately tried to escape. Suddenly, Jake's flashlight flickered, plunging them into darkness for a brief moment. He smacked the flashlight, and the beam stabilized. "These batteries should last longer. This place is messing with our gear." "Let's just keep moving," Lisa urged. "We need to find a way back soon." They continued on, navigating through a series of winding corridors. The deeper they went, the more the layout seemed to twist and turn, as if the bunker had been designed to confuse anyone who dared enter. The walls felt as if they were closing in, and the air grew colder with each step. "Are we even going the right way?" Mark asked, glancing around. Jake shrugged, consulting the map. "I think so. This layout is confusing. But the deeper we go, the closer we get to the main chamber, I think." Chapter 3. Shadows in the Dark. Hours passed as they wandered through the maze of tunnels, each one leading to dead ends or rooms filled with decayed machinery and supplies. They found a room filled with rows of beds and scattered belongings, as if the occupants had left in a hurry. Old uniforms, marked with strange insignias, lay strewn across the floor. Lisa picked up a metal dog tag, its surface tarnished. Whoever was here, they didn't just abandon this place. They left in a hurry. The tension was palpable as they pressed on. The walls now bore strange, faded symbols, spirals and eye-like shapes scratched into the concrete. The air felt heavy, and an odd humming noise seemed to emanate from deep within the bunker. The sound was distant, almost like machinery still running after decades of disuse. "Something isn't right," Lisa muttered, her grip tightening on her flashlight. Suddenly, they heard a metallic clang from behind. All three of them froze, turning toward the noise. The clang was followed by a slow, scraping sound, like claws dragging across metal. The sound was distant, but growing louder, echoing through the tunnels. "What was that?" Mark whispered, his face pale. Jake motioned for silence. "Turn off your lights," he whispered. "Whatever it is, let's not attract it." They switched off their flashlights, plunging into total darkness. The scraping grew closer, louder, and the stench of decay filled the air. They held their breath, listening as the sound moved past them. Through the darkness, they could barely make out a figure, hunched and emaciated, its skin pale and taut over its skeletal frame. Its eyes were milky white, unseeing, but its nose twitched as it sniffed the air. Lisa clutched Jake's arm, her breath coming in shallow gasps as the creature passed, its claws scraping against the walls. After a tense few moments, it moved on, disappearing into another corridor. "We need to get out of here now," Lisa whispered urgently. "We've seen enough." Chapter 4. The Labyrinth. They switched their flashlights back on and tried to retrace their steps, but every turn seemed to lead them deeper into the maze. The air grew colder, and the oppressive silence returned, broken only by the distant growls and echoes of movement. "None of this looks familiar," Jake said, his voice edged with frustration. "It's like the bunker is changing." "We've been walking for hours," Mark added, checking his watch. "We should have found the exit by now." Lisa pulled out a map she had been sketching as they went, but it was confusing and incomplete. "This place is a labyrinth," she said. "Every hallway looks the same, and the paths keep branching off." As they navigated through another tunnel, the sound of static crackled from one of the nearby rooms. They cautiously entered, finding a control room filled with old monitors and panels. The screens flickered, displaying grainy black and white footage of various parts of the bunker. Jake wiped the dust from one of the screens. "This is security footage. Look." He pointed at one of the monitors, showing a long, empty corridor. "Wait, what's that?" On the screen, they saw a figure, pale, emaciated, moving swiftly through the hallway. Then another, and another. The creatures crawled along the walls, their movements jerky and unnatural. "There's more than one," Mark said, his voice a whisper. Lisa's eyes widened. "We need to leave now." Suddenly, the power in the room flickered, and the monitors cut out, plunging them into darkness. The growls and scraping noises intensified, echoing from all directions. "Run!" Jake shouted, and they sprinted through the tunnels, their flashlights bobbing as they ran. The creatures' footsteps pounded behind them, getting closer. They twisted and turned through the corridors, each turn feeling like they were going deeper into a trap. Finally, they reached a large chamber filled with piles of bones, some old, others disturbingly fresh. Skulls and limbs were scattered across the floor, many with claw marks etched into the bone. "Oh my God," Lisa breathed. "This is where they bring their victims." Jake grabbed her arm. "We have to keep moving." Chapter 5, The Chase. The creatures were relentless. They ran down the tunnels, pursued by the deafening echoes of claws and growls. They reached a locked door, and Jake shoved it open, pulling Lisa and Mark through before slamming it shut. The metal rattled as the creatures clawed at the other side. "We can't stay here," Mark said, breathing heavily. "They'll get through." Jake nodded, his eyes scanning the room. It was filled with old, decaying equipment and crates piled high. "There's another exit on the other side. We just need to reach it." But as they crossed the room, the ceiling tiles above began to shift. One of the creatures dropped down, landing with a thud. Its mouth opened, emitting a guttural growl that echoed off the walls. Jake swung his metal rod, striking the creature, but it barely flinched. "Run!" Lisa screamed as they bolted toward the other exit. They pushed through the door and slammed it shut, but the creatures continued their pursuit. They found themselves back in the main tunnel, where the air was thick with the scent of decay. The only light came from their flashlights, and the darkness seemed to stretch endlessly in both directions. "This is it," Jake said. "We have to make a run for the hatch." They sprinted down the corridor, the exit finally in sight. But just as they reached the staircase, one of the creatures lunged, grabbing Mark by the ankle and pulling him back. "Mark!" Lisa screamed as Jake pulled her up the stairs. Mark's screams echoed through the hallway as the monster dragged him into the darkness. Jake and Lisa reached the top of the stairs and scrambled out of the hatch, slamming it shut behind them. They lay on the ground, gasping for breath as the cool night air enveloped them. But as they caught their breath, the hatch creaked open once again. Red Pines would soon have another story of explorers who never returned.